Regret by Kate Chopin. The story was first published in 1897 when it appeared in Chopin's short story collections A Night in Arcadia. Mamsley Allred possessed a good strong figure, ruddy cheeks, hair that was changing from brown to gray, and a determined eye. She wore a man's hat about the farm and an old blue army overcoat when it was cold, and sometimes top boots. Mamsley Allred had never thought of marrying. She had never been in love. At the age of 20, she had received a proposal, which she had promptly declined, and at the age of 50, she had not yet lived to regret it. So, she was quite alone in the world, except for her dog, Ponto, and the negroes who lived in her cabins and worked her crops, and the floors, a few cows, a couple of moose, her gun, with which she shot chicken hawks, and her religion. One morning, Monsieur Rory stood upon her gallery, contemplating with arms akimbo a small band of very small children who, to all intents and purposes, might have fallen from the clouds. So unexpected, she bewildering was their coming, and so unwelcomed. They were the children of her nearest neighbor, although who was not such a near neighbor after all. The young woman had appeared but 5 minutes before, accompanied by these 4 children. In her arms she carried little Lottie. She dragged Tinome by an unwilling hand, while Maxline and Marcelle followed with irresolute steps. Her face was red and disfigured from tears and excitement. She had been summoned to a neighboring parish by the dangerous illness of her mother. Her husband was away in Texas. It seemed to her a million miles away, and Walsin was waiting with the mule cart to drive her to the station. It's not a question, mostly Ori. You just got to keep those youngsters for me till I come back. Do said. I wouldn't bother you with if was any other way to do. Make em mind you. Monsieur Ori, don't spam. Me that I'm half crazy between the children and not at home and maybe not even a fine pole. My man alive and called. A harrowing possible which drove Ali to take final hasty and convulsive leave of her disconsolate family. She left them crowded into the narrow strip of shade on the porch of the long, low house. The white sunlight was beating in on the white old boards. Some chickens were scratching in the grass at the foot of the steps, and one had bloodily mounted and was stepping heavily, solemnly, and aimlessly across the gallery. There was a pleasant odor of pinks in the air, and the sound of negroes' laughter was coming across the flowering cotton field. Mumsley Orwell stood contemplating the children. She looked with a critical eye upon Maxline, who had been left staggering beneath the weight of the chubby Lottie. She surveyed with the same calculating air Margaret, mingling her silent tears with the audible griefs and rebellion of Tinome. During those few contemplative moments, she was collecting herself, determining upon a line of actions which should be identical with a line of duty. She began by feeding them. If Ma'am Leroy's responsibilities might have begun and ended there, they could easily have been dismissed, for her larder was amply provided against an emergencies of this nature. But little children are not little pigs. They require and demand attentions, which were wholly unexpected by Mamsley Ori, and which she was ill prepared to give. She was, indeed, very inept in her management of all these children during the first few days. How could she know that Margaret always wept when spoken to in a loud and commanding tone of voice? It was a peculiarity of Margaret. She became acquainted with Tinomi's passions for flowers only when he had plucked all the choicest gardenias and the pinks for the apparent purpose of critically studying their botanical constructions. Take an enough to tell, and mostly all read. Maclean instructed her. You got to tight up in a chair. It's what my man all time do when he's bad. She tied up in a chair. The chair in which Marceline already tied Tinom was roomy and comfortable, and he seized the opportunity to take a nap in it. In the afternoon being warm, at night, when she ordered them one and all to bed as she would have shown the chickens into the hen house, they stayed uncomprehending before her. What about the little white nightgowns that had to be taken from the pillow slip in which they were brought over, and shaken by some strong hand till they snapped like ox whips? What about the tub of water which had to be brought and set in the middle of the floor, in which a little tired, dusty, sun-browned feet had everyone to be washed sweet and cleaned, and it made Muslin and Muslet laugh merrily. The idea that Muslin already choose for a moment have believed that Tinom could fall asleep without being told the story of Croftgate, Methane, or Lufgar Road, or both, or that Lottie could fall asleep at all without being rocked and sung to. I tell you, Aunt Ruby, Marjorie informed her cook in confidence. Me, I'd rather manage a dozen plantations than 4 children. It's Torrescent. Bond, don't talk to me about children. Dear Aunt, I expected such as you would know everything about 'em. Mostly already. I see that plainly yesterday when I spied that little child playing with you basket of keys. You don't know that makes children grow up hard-headed to play with keys. That's like to make 'em teeth hard to look in a looking glass. Them's the thing you got to know in the lessons and management of children. Master Ori certainly did not pretend or aspire to such subtle and far-reaching knowledge on the subjects as Aunt Ruby possessed, who had raised 5 and borrowed 6 in her day. She was glad enough to learn few little mother tricks to serve the moment's need. Tinom's sticky fingers compelled her to unearth white apron that she had not worn for years, and she had to accustom herself to his moist kisses, the expressions of an affectionate and exuberant nature. She got down her sewing basket, which she seldom used, from the top shelves of the armoire, and placed within the ready and easy reach which torn slips and buttonless waist demanded. It took her some days to become accustomed to the laughing, the crying, the chattering that echoed through the house and around it all day long. And it was not the first or the second night that she could sleep comfortably with little Lottie's hot, plump body pressed close against her, and the little one's warm breath beating her cheek like the fanning of a bird's wing. But at the end of 2 weeks, Mamsley already had grown quite used to these things, and she no longer complained. It was also at the end of 2 weeks that Mesli Henri, one evening looking away toward the crypt where the cattle were being fed, saw Wasin's blue cart turning the bend of the road. Audrey sat beside the mulatto, upright and alert. As they drew near, the young woman's beaming face indicated that her homecoming was a happy one. But this coming, unannounced and unexpected, threw Master Ori into the flutter that was almost agitation. The children had to be gathered. Where was Tim Nom? Yonder in the shed, putting an edge on his knife at the grindstone, and Maslin and Maslet cutting and fashioning doll rags in the corner of the gallery. As for Ludi, she was safe enough in Madeline Orri's arms, and she had screamed with delight at sight of the family blue cart, which was bringing her mother back to her. The excitement was all over, and they were gone. How still it was when they were gone! Mercy Ori stood upon the gallery, looking and listening. She could no longer see the cart. The red sunset and the blue-gray twilight had together flung purple mists across the field and road that hid it from her view. She could no longer hear the fizzing and cracking of its wheels, but she could still faintly hear the chilled, glad voices of children. She turned into the house. There was much work awaiting her, for the children had left a sad disorder behind them. But she did not at once set about the task of writing it. Mostly Lee seated herself beside the table. She gave one slow glance through the room, into which the evening shadows were creeping and depending around her solitary figure. She let her head fall down upon her bended arm and began to cry. Oh, but she cried not softly, as women often do. She cried like a man, with sobs that seemed to tear her very soul. She did not notice Ponto licking her hand. And that's it. I have a problem pronounce the people's name, children's name, and the speaking, the line that the word of the character is a little bit difficult and confused. Thank you for listening and have a good day, everybody. Bye.